right, so this is episode 3 of the Feel for the Game podcast. I'm Wilkes White, and I'm with Landon Estel, my co-host, and we're going to be talking about the Big Ten quarterbacks. I'm really excited about this list because we got a lot of newcomers, a lot of transfers. We have some quarterback battles. I think it's going to get really interesting. Not any real standouts like guys that I've seen proven talent already that make me feel like they're the number one guy straight off the bat. So, Landon, I'm going to go ahead and get into my list first. I'm going to start at the bottom. I've got kind of tied for 17th. I didn't really feel like one of these guys kind of appealed to me more than the other. So I got Justin Martin in Maryland and Drake Lindsey from Minnesota at the bottom, kind of tied there. Not really sure how I feel about either of them yet. Justin Martin hasn't played a lot of football. I don't think Drake Lindsey really has played much either. Minnesota has a higher upside as a football team, in my opinion. I think they've always got a pretty solid defense. They're able to put together some decent offensive outings, like they had a close game with Michigan last year. I feel like Drake Lindsey's potential is a little bit higher with his team around him, making him play better football. Maryland, I feel like they're just losing too much this year to be extremely competitive in this conference. So, with that being said, I think you probably give the edge to Drake Lindsey, depending on what kind of team Minnesota is able to field, transitioning from last year. They were pretty competitive for the most part, so probably give him the nod there. So 16, I've got Ethan Kaliakmanis from Rutgers. So I'm not really looking forward to watching Rutgers offense. I feel like they've lost so many key pieces. Kind of worried that that's going to be an issue for Ethan. I think that if they can get the run game going, kind of going back to that read option kind of style offense that they can run back when they've had really good running backs, I feel like he could be a decent quarterback for them this season, and maybe they could pull out some wins that they weren't supposed to get. I like seeing Rutgers win in football. I think it makes it interesting, but I don't feel like this is going to be one of those good years for Rutgers. So depending on how Ethan Kaliakmanis plays, this team's upside is kind of low. So I don't really see the quarterback position being a real big impact on the field. The weapons just aren't there. Not really seeing too much production coming out of that position. So number 15, I've got Malachi Singleton. Now, this one's going to be really interesting. So, Malachi Singleton's coming from Arkansas, heading to Purdue, and Purdue just finished a really rough season. Had a couple players stand out, but overall, really, really bad season. One of the worst defenses in college football. One of the lowest producing offenses also in college football. So, Malachi Singleton, if anybody remembers, went into Knoxville last year and beat Tennessee. That was that was one of the best performances I've seen. I think it was he a freshman, Landon? I can't
Yeah, I
remember.
think it was. I think he was a redshirt freshman last season.
I think that was a redshirt freshman year for him. So kind of coming out off the bench cold when Taylor Green got hurt, playing in a tough environment. And was it at Tennessee? Because I feel like it might have been
No, they
Arkansas.
hosted Tennessee.
Okay, so it was at home. They're playing at Tennessee this year. Okay, sorry, I had that backwards. Tennessee was highly ranked. They clearly had a better team, and Malachi Singleton ran the game. The dude was a freak athlete. I think he kind of carried Arkansas on his back in that game. Despite the limited experience, he was able to put on a really solid performance and win the game for him, which they needed that position because, I mean, Taylor Green was kind of their whole offense last year. I mean, he was the games they won were pretty much because of him. So having a guy come in there and kind of fill those shoes the same way, I like Malachi Singleton. I think if Purdue can field a little bit more of a decent team out of the transfer portal and utilize a little bit more depth, I think that they could be a little bit dangerous on offense. I think Devin McAbee's back at running back, so that's good for them. I don't know what their receivers look like. Just not really excited about Purdue's offense outside of Malachi Singleton and Devin McAbee. So if they can find some receivers and their offensive line can hold up at all, they might be able to pull out a couple wins. I think this guy will stick around there for a while, and he'll probably end up being a long-term starter there. Number 14, I've got Aiden Childs, Michigan State. So I watched Aiden Childs play a couple games. I remember his game against Florida Atlantic last year. I think they barely won, right? That was a tight game.
It was like 16-6 or
It
something
was
just disgusting like that.
It's a gross game. Don't think that was one of his better games. They have a guy returning at wide receiver this year that I'm excited about, Nick Marsh. If they can build some chemistry in the offseason and really make those reps count, and again, got to find some offensive line play. They've historically had some pretty decent running backs. If they can find a run game to help him out a little bit, I think he's got some talent. I think he was a previous 4-star. I really do think that he's got talent, but I just don't know that they can rely solely on Nick Marsh in the passing game to elevate Aiden Child's level of play, he's going to have more pieces around him kind of come together. So got him at 14, but I feel like he's got some upside. We could see him kind of shift up this list depending on what the guys right in front of him do. Because I think the guys directly in front of him, their teams are probably a lot more volatile in terms of games that they're probably not going to be able to win. So at number 12, I've got Preston Stone at Northwestern. I don't think Northwestern has a good football team. Just going to come right out the bat and say that I think that's going to be what holds Preston Stone back. Those of you who don't remember, he was at SMU last year, switching conferences to the ACC, season one there. Did not have a hot start. Really struggled, which was kind of surprising because he's played some really good football. I think he's very talented. Got beat out by Kevin Jennings. Kevin Jennings is a stud, so he decided that he needed to find somewhere else where he was going to be able to play straight up. Northwestern seemed to be the best option for him. I'm surprised somebody else didn't pick him up. I think he's got more talent than Northwestern talent, but that's where he ended up. I don't think that this Wildcats team is going to be able to field a competitive football team. Unless Preston Stone ends up carrying this team on his back, I just do not see this team doing very much. Their offense has been pretty rough for a little while now. I think even when they had Mike Wright, I guess it was either the year before this or this past year, he was there. They couldn't even get anything going really in the run game with him, and he was a really athletic quarterback. So I don't know what they're going to do with a pocket passer like Preston Stone. He's a true pocket passer. He's very accurate. He has really good touch on his deep ball. I just don't see them really pushing the ball down the field. So I don't know how they're going to utilize him. I feel like this is really interesting because the guy I've got next to him, Billy Edwards, has a lot of tangibles that make him a really good quarterback, but he's also going to a team which I just don't know has the talent coming back to make him really a threat like he was at Maryland. And I think I might have mixed up. I have Preston Stone at 12. Billy Edwards, I just skipped, is at number 13. I feel like those four, Malachi Singleton, Aiden Childs, Billy Edwards, and Preston Stone, I've seen enough of their play to where those spots are kind of all interchangeable for me. I really like Aiden Childs' upside, but I think he's got the best receiver. I just don't know that this year is going to be the year that they take a big step. I do really like Billy Edwards as a whole. I think he's got the most experience. He's been in the league for a while at Maryland, decided to transfer to Wisconsin. But I think they're moving back to kind of a ground and pound offense. I just don't really see him being the same kind of player he was at Maryland. He's going to have to kind of change a little bit and adapt to a new style offense. They just fired Phil Longo, so they're going to be going back to the typical Wisconsin offense we see when they've had those power running games and the star running backs in the backfield. But don't know that they even have the running back that they usually would have at that position to make a really big impact. So Billy Edwards, Preston Stone, kind of interchangeable for me. But yeah, again, I had Preston Stone at 12, Billy Edwards at 13. Just don't really know who's going to end up really taking the biggest step forward. Wisconsin probably has more of a pedigree as a football team and probably is able to develop their recruits a little bit better than Northwestern. So Billy Edwards could end up getting the edge over Preston Stone later in the season, but I've kind of got them all in the same kind of group of like moderate upside, some decent experience, but just still has to kind of prove it category. I think that's probably fair for them. At 11, I've got Bryce Underwood with Michigan, and then Mikey Keene. They're battling right now for that spot, and I've seen Mikey Keene play at Fresno State, and I like what he's got. I just don't know if he really fits into the style offense that Michigan runs. I kind of look back at Shea Patterson when he transferred to Michigan when Jim Harbaugh was still there. Shea Patterson played for Ole Miss. He was a five-star quarterback. The dude was airing the ball out at Ole Miss. I mean, he had a little bit of a turnover issue and was a little inexperienced, but he had a lot of talent. Went to Michigan and they just ran the ball, play action. That was kind of their offense, and he just did not thrive in that offense when they moved over there. And I just don't know how Sharon Moore is going to make this huge quarterback change to either Bryce Underwood or Mikey Keene kind of play into their strengths. It'll be interesting to see if they change anything there. Don't know what they've got at receiver. I feel like it's kind of a wild card with Michigan, who ends up stepping up to be their number one every year. They'll have some talent at that position, I'm sure. Bryce Underwood obviously has the clear upside, being the number one overall recruit in the country, decommitting from LSU and committing to Michigan. If he ends up starting, I feel like that would probably be after like the first couple games. Mikey Keene probably doesn't end up getting off to a hot start, and they need a little bit of a spark. Maybe we see him at the Oklahoma game kind of step in for Mikey Keene if Mikey Keene has a rough start. I feel like that's kind of going to be the make or break to see who the starter is going to be moving into the middle of the season when the stretch gets tough. Who is going to make it out against a tough defensive line in Norman? I feel like Bryce Underwood would probably have a really tough time moving the ball against that defense in that environment. Making that your first start, I just don't see that being a good position to throw him into. Mikey Keene would have to play really rough if he's named the starter for Bryce Underwood to get put in right there. So I feel like this quarterback room has a lot of upside. Both these guys are very talented. Mikey Keene has a lot of experience from Fresno. Bryce Underwood is just an absolute freak athlete. So whoever ends up starting is going to end up being the player that they need at Michigan to win games. It's just going to be who shows up as weapons for them and will they be able to adapt to the offense that Michigan's trying to run there? Kind of similar to what J.J. McCarthy did over the couple of years he was there. In year 3, it finally just kind of culminated to this really efficient style of football that nobody really had an answer for. So if they can do that with a young Bryce Underwood or an experienced Mikey Keene, they can be dangerous. Looking for them to take a little bit of a step up with the kind of wins they had last year, beating Alabama and Ohio State. You can lose 5 games and win those games and still have a really impressive season. I feel like Michigan kind of went under the radar after they lost a bunch of games early in the season and then pulled off 2 of the most impressive wins probably in college football last year, late in the season. I feel like they could take a big step forward with the right quarterback here. Number 10, I've got Jaden Mavia at USC. So I think when I think of Jaden Mavia, I look back at one game that just has me kind of confused on how I feel about him, which would be the Notre Dame game. I really thought USC was going to go win this game. I thought this was going to be the make or break game for Notre Dame to prove they were still really fraudulent or not. After losing to NIU, I just was kind of on the fence about them all year. And then we saw several game-changing interceptions from Jaden Mavia against Notre Dame. And that was late in the game. They had been moving the ball, and they would get down into the red zone, interception. Get all the way back down to the red zone, interception. And I think 1 or 2 of those got returned for touchdowns, which swung the whole game for the Fighting Irish, and they ended up winning that game against USC. So I think this guy's got a lot of talent. They're replacing a lot of production at wide receiver, but they've still got some guys. I feel like they are going to be able to string it together at that position, but they're going to miss Zachariah Branch and Kyron Hudson going to Penn State and Georgia. I really think that he's going to have a solid season. Just going to need to see him cut down on the turnovers and find some solid receivers. But USC could be a team to watch for sure if he ends up playing some really high caliber football. Number 9, I've got Mark Gronowski going to Iowa, transferring from South Dakota State. I really like Mark Gronowski. I think he's got a level of toughness that Iowa really likes at that position. They haven't had a quarterback that's been a game changer, and I can't even think of how long. This guy, he's very accurate outside the pocket. He can make plays extend when they're looking like it's probably going to be a negative yardage play or throwaway. He gives you a chance to get positive yards or touchdown, which I think Iowa needs that spark on offense to be a team to beat in the Big Ten. Their defense is going to be really solid, like always, given that it's Iowa. I think that's kind of just a norm now that's accepted. But if they can find something offensively with him, losing Caleb Johnson at running back is going to hurt them. But I think he could have a really efficient season. He may not put up crazy numbers because that's just not the offense they run at Iowa. I think if he plays efficiently, he could be one of the top quarterbacks in the Big Ten by the end of the season. If people kind of end up sleeping on him, they'll start seeing him climb up the stat leaderboards and be like, okay, this guy's 70% completion percentage, only thrown 1 interception, and it's week 8. He's ran the ball really well. Their negative yardage plays are getting cut in half from last year. You could see something like that out of him, and Iowa's 10-2 to finish the season. Maybe they slip into the Big Ten championship game. That would be really interesting because there's a really wide open lane to the Big Ten championship for some of these teams. I think that all hinges on Mark Gronowski for Iowa. So going into number 8, I've got Dylan Raiola. I feel like this is a position where everybody's going to have him probably in the top 5, top 4, just given the name, given the pedigree, given the hype always behind Nebraska for some reason, which I don't understand. He's going to be up there for most people. For me, I think I'm just going to have to see him cut down on the turnovers. The interceptions were a real issue last year. He made some really incredible throws, but at the same time, I just did not feel like their offense was consistently moving the ball down the field, and it was never really because of their passing game. They were able to run the ball pretty decent in a couple games that kept them in it, but I didn't feel like Dylan Raiola really ever moved the needle in games where he showed, yeah, I'm the number 1 overall player in the class that I came out of, and I'm absolutely going to be winning games for my football team. It was more of like, yeah, he's talented. Yeah, he's helping us play decent football, but he's not outright winning us football games. If he can turn the corner in year 2, I think there's a chance he could be the quarterback that they need to win games, but I'm just not really bought in on the Dylan Raiola hype just yet. Nebraska kind of is one of those teams where they just, like Texas A&M, they come in with a lot of hype every year with not the kind of recruiting classes that A&M gets, and then they end up kind of just falling into the same old losing by one score games, not winning the games they're supposed to win, and disappointing the fan base. So if he can take a step up, they might actually exceed that 7-5 ceiling that they've been setting for themselves for the past 5 seasons. Moving on to number 7, I've got Dante Moore. I think this could have potential to be probably one of the most volatile quarterbacks in this ranking. Dante Moore played one season back at UCLA, and I think he had a lot of turnovers, low completion percentage. He really struggled to be consistent for them, so he didn't end up finishing out for them. I can't remember. They had a kind of quarterback battle going, and he got some playing time. Didn't really stick. Moved to Oregon. They just lost their quarterback this past season in Dylan Gabriel, one of the most seasoned quarterbacks that's come through college football. Played a million seasons, one of the top passers of all time in college football. Very efficient quarterback. They're going to miss him a lot. I think it's going to show. But Dante Moore's got that 5-star pedigree. He's got a lot of skill. I think he could be one of those guys that starts off a little slow and then kind of works his way through the season. You're like, okay, he's gelling with the receiver room. Offensive line's incredible. They've got a lot of depth in a lot of these positions that will work around him to build a really good, consistent offense that we're used to seeing out of Oregon. I think they got receivers like they always do. I think they got the offensive line. Will he be able to step up in such a short time over the offseason with limited reps and be the quarterback that they are expecting out of him? I'm not sure, but I've got him at number 7 for that reason. He could move up, he could move down. Right now, I think he's kind of in that top third, just barely. Number 6, I've got Fernando Mendoza transferring from Cal over to Indiana. So I'm not extremely high on Indiana, despite their really, really good season last year that nobody saw coming. I feel like they're going to be pretty solid. They'll probably be a contender going into November in the Big Ten. I don't know that they'll finish that way, but it definitely is going to hinge on Fernando Mendoza. I thought he played some incredible football last year for Cal, despite the lack of talent that school had. I feel like their recruiting's always been a real struggle. When they found a good quarterback, they found a way to win games. And I think they'll look back and say that Fernando Mendoza was one of the better quarterbacks we've seen come out of Cal in a long time. It's just a shame he didn't stay there for the Golden Bears. But Indiana, they didn't have a real playmaker quarterback last year. Curtis Rourke was really, really consistent and efficient, and he won them games by kind of being a field general, managing the game properly, not turning the ball over too much, getting the ball to their playmakers like Elijah Surratt. And I think that that's gonna be what Fernando Mendoza is gonna be at just the baseline. I think this guy's gonna get the ball to their playmakers, but I also think this guy's gonna be able to go out and win them games that they probably wouldn't have won last year, depending on the matchup. Their defense is a little bit more porous than it was on the defensive line last year. They really were able to piece together a solid transfer class, and they had a great D line last year, which was one of the main reasons they had great success under Kurt Cignetti. But I think Fernando Mendoza is kind of the key to this team. If they can unlock a real passing game with Elijah Surratt, and I think they have a really solid number 2, he could be the key to this offense and the key to this team possibly being one of the topper echelon teams in the Big Ten again this year. I'm high on him. I think he probably will end up climbing this list. I don't think he stays at 6. So going on to number 5, I got Nico Imaliaba going to UCLA from Tennessee. I think Tennessee really let one slip here. I don't really know all of the details behind why he left outside of possibly it being money, possibly there being some sort of issue with his playing style in the offense, or whether it was something with the coaches or players. He left. And going to UCLA where they really, really needed a solid quarterback with at least some in-game experience in the college realm, not just coming straight out of high school, I really feel like he could end up being probably one of the more talented quarterbacks in the Big Ten. I think he's got all the tangibles. I really like how he operates in the pocket, kind of escaping the rush. He's really talented off platform. He's got extreme velocity behind the football, throws a tight spiral. I think that depending on what UCLA is able to put on the field offensively, the guys around him are just going to continue to complement the kind of skill that he's got. Those tight window throws he's really good at. He's got an inconsistent deep ball, but I feel like when he's on, he's hitting those throws. So they had a really good receiver last season. I felt like their over to the top presence offensively was what kept teams on their toes. It was Nico going to hit those throws? They had a lot of intermediate throws to Squirrel White that I feel like that was kind of the key to their offense. If they had that throw in the bag, Squirrel White could take it to the house. Obviously, that he left and went to FSU, but I don't know if UCLA has those kinds of receivers. We're going to have to see what comes out of that receiver room, but I think Nico's got all the talent he needs to be a really elite quarterback in the Big Ten this year going into the first week. I think that he'll probably make his way into the top 5 for the majority of the season. I don't see him really dropping unless UCLA has an absolute disaster class of a season. But I really like him a lot. I think people are kind of low on him. I'm not really sure why. Watching him play, I mean, he beat Alabama as a true freshman. So I don't know what much more you can ask from a true freshman going into the offense like Tennessee. I know it's a slightly easier RPO based offense, but he was able to put on some really good performances, even though he was slightly inconsistent. That was his first year. You got to give quarterbacks time to develop in this league. They need time to understand the offense. They need reps with their receivers. They need time behind an offensive line. It just takes time. And I think this is a perfect example of a guy who just needs a little bit more time. By junior season, if he stays for that long, going into senior season, that could be really special. If he stays for 4 years, I think by senior season, he could be one of the best quarterbacks in college football. But I see him probably leaving after junior season. So, got him at number 5. And number 4 is probably one of my favorite players in this whole list. I got Damon Williams at Washington. So, limited sample size. I think he only played a couple games down the stretch after Will Rogers took an exit. They really struggled to move the ball offensively with him, which was kind of surprising. I thought he was going to pan out there really well. But Damon Williams has all the athleticism necessary to be probably one of the best quarterbacks in this conference. High completion percentage, really good touchdown interception ratio. Boom or bust, like this guy's definitely going to lean more towards boom. Like he's making big plays very often. And I mean, this is against some of the best defenses in college football. So I'm really excited to see how he operates after a full season operating as the number 1 quarterback and not the backup. Going into last season, I don't think anybody really saw him seeing the field behind a really experienced Will Rogers. But the fact that he was able to get on the field and have the production he had in a team like Washington that had a dramatic fall off from the talent pool that they had previously in that national championship run where they played Michigan. I mean, he had a really impressive end of the season. I really love watching him against Louisville. He put on an absolute show. I think he's probably going to end up being one of my favorite quarterbacks out of all these guys on this list. He has probably the highest ceiling, in my opinion, out of all these guys. Maybe other than Nico. Nico and Damon Williams have the high ceiling for me, but they have a lot to prove. Number 3, I've got Ohio State's quarterback battle between Julian Sain and Lincoln Kienholz. So I think they just talked about this today. Ohio State did that they're still really not sure who's going to be the starter here. I really think that Julian Sain's got the arm talent to be a really solid quarterback. I haven't seen a lot out of Lincoln Kienholz, but ever Ohio State puts on that field in week 1 against Texas, I feel like is going to be a really good option for them regardless. I don't feel like they can screw this up. Unless there's something that I'm missing on the outside here in this quarterback battle, they've got the talent they need. It's just who's the guy? Who's the most prepared to take on a top defense in the country in week 1? And I don't know who that's going to be. I'm leaning Julian Sain, but both these guys have a lot of talent, and they have a plethora of talent around them to help them succeed. We've seen Ohio State do this again and again with their quarterbacks, whether it was C.J. Stroud, Justin Fields. I mean, they're putting guys in year 1, and they're having great success. Whether they're transferring in or they're starting freshman year, they're having really good success. It may not have panned out for Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, but I really do think that out of these 2 guys, they're going to find their starter probably in the first couple of weeks. Maybe even week 1 against Texas in a big game. Number 2, I've got Luke Altmaier at Illinois. So my top 2 guys here may not have the biggest stat boxes by the end of the season, but I think their teams probably are leaning on them the most. So Luke Altmaier is returning. I think this is for his 4th or 5th season. He played 2 seasons at Ole Miss, didn't see the field a lot, got beat out by Jackson Dart, transferred to Illinois after those 2 seasons, and I think last year he had a considerably better season as far as efficiency is concerned. He may not have put up crazy stats, but he played really well. They had good receivers. They had Sakari Franklin, who also transferred from Ole Miss, and they had Pat Bryant, who has just now left for the NFL. Really solid receivers. I really do like Luke Altmaier. I feel like his run game's kind of slept on. I think if they can utilize the quarterback run out of him a little bit more, that offense could get opened up for Brett Bielema. Down the field, he's not really pushing the ball consistently enough. I'd like to see him attack defenses a little bit more, but intermediate throws, he's very accurate, very poised in the pocket. Going to make you pay if you give him too much time. He's very accurate and can pick you apart. I really think that Illinois is going to be one of those teams that's like 1 or 2 games off for the Big Ten championship, but you probably look back at a couple plays and you're like, man, this team was so close. They just were missing depth at this position that probably kept them from winning these football games. I don't think they've got the talent to be a top 4 team in the Big Ten, but there's a really good chance that they end up being in contention in November, right there with Indiana as one of those teams kind of on the fringe. If they win a game they're not supposed to win, they could make the Big Ten championship, and it probably is because of the quarterback position. So if they find the receiver production after losing their top two guys last year, I think they'll be really efficient on offense, and I think the defense is going to be really solid for Illinois. So if you're watching Luke Altmaier, I don't think he's going to blow up the box stats, but I mean he's going to be solid for them this year. The number one, I've got Drew Aller at Penn State. I think this team has absolutely no excuse to be the best team in the Big Ten. Ohio State has all the talent to continue to be the best team in the Big Ten, but Penn State returns the most production, the most offensive talent in the backfield for sure. They've got Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. They lose Tyler Warren and several receivers, which is going to hurt them a lot. They bring Trevor Pena from Syracuse, and I believe they had another receiver transfer that was a really big addition for them. Also escaping my mind at the moment. But they're replacing talent at that position pretty well. It's just, is James Franklin going to find that spark on offense that separates this team from the teams of the past? I just don't feel like Penn State really is one of those teams that is going to get over the hump. They have too much riding on James Franklin winning these big games. It just feels like too much pressure for them. I feel like every year it rolls around the Ohio State game, they hang in there, they play relatively competitive, and they drop the game. And then their whole season just kind of rides on that game. So if they can beat Ohio State, I think the ceiling is really high for this team. They've got a really solid defense coming back, but Drew Aller is going to have to play absolutely the best football of his career if they want to make a really deep run into the playoffs again. I felt like that late run from him, I don't think it was really that solid. I think he could have played a lot better in those last couple playoff games in the Big Ten championship, but I'm just going to have to see him take a really big step this year. If he takes a Joe Burrow-esque step, that team could be unstoppable, but I don't see that happening. I think he'll take a slight step of improvement just with more time in the system, but new receivers, that always takes a little bit of time and more reps for them to gel together and be really efficient, but this team has no excuse to be any worse than 10-2. I fully expect them to be really solid this season. Drew Aller's just going to have to play really high level football, which I think a lot of people are expecting him to do. I've got him at number one because of the team around him. I think he's got NFL level talent. I'm just not sure if he pans out to be as successful as some of these other guys with way higher ceilings athletically. But got him at number one. I think that Penn State has a real chance to make a deep run, but they're going to have to beat Ohio State this season. All right, that's my Big Ten quarterback rankings, despite a couple of hiccups kind of in where I was placing them. I had a hard time making that list. I felt like there's a lot of volatility in the new quarterbacks coming in this year for this conference. Like the Big 12, I think there's a lot of talent, maybe not as much, but this list was a little bit harder to make for me because I haven't seen these guys in these new offenses. The Big Ten offenses are definitely a different kind of playing style than these quarterbacks are used to, so they're going to have to adapt to that and definitely step up to the plate if they want to have big seasons in their first season. So, Landon, what you got?
So to start us off at number 18, I have Justin Martin, the quarterback from Maryland. Former four-star. He was at UCLA prior to this. I'm not sure if that was last season or the season before. I think this is the second season at Maryland, I'm pretty sure. Didn't get on the field much last year. Maryland as a team is kind of trending down. I don't think he's going to do a ton this year. It just really hasn't panned out yet. A lot of people thought he was going to be a pretty solid quarterback, but just haven't seen that yet. So I'm going to have him at 18. Number 17, Drake Lindsey from Minnesota. He also didn't do a ton as a true freshman last year. So he's taken over for Brosmer. Minnesota should have a solid team. I think this is a decent situation for Lindsey, but we really just haven't seen much from him yet. I mean, we shouldn't have as he was a true freshman last year, but unknown there. Not a super highly rated prospect, so I feel good having him at 17. Number 16, Malachi Singleton at Purdue, coming over from Arkansas. He did get a little bit of playing time in Arkansas last year in some games that Taylon Green was a little banged up in, and he did perform well in those games, but coming over to Purdue, really awful team last year. I believe it was 1-11 season last year. Pretty much a completely new roster. I believe they have the most transfers of any team in college football coming in. I think he's a talented player, but with a team like that, it's hard to tell how he's going to do. So I think 16 is a good place for him right now, but I feel like he could end up being higher than this. I feel like probably have him a little bit too low, but just Purdue last year, all the turnover. I'm going to have him at 16. So number 15, I have Ethan Kaliakmanis, probably botched that pronunciation. He's at Rutgers. Decent year last year. His number one problem is being accurate with the football. Not a great passer. Rutgers overall offensively usually kind of a struggle for them. So I'm not expecting a ton on the stat sheet from him this season. And Rutgers overall, not sure how they're going to be. I don't think Elliott Manis is super talented, so I'm going to have him at number 15. Number 14, Aiden Childs from Michigan State. A lot of people were hyping him up last year, expecting him to be good. Even himself, he was hyping himself up a little bit there early in the year. Before their first game of the season, he was talking about how everybody should bet the over on the game, and then I think the total points against Florida Atlantic ended up being like 28 or something, so he kind of got clowned on for that. And then not a great year, 13 touchdowns to 11 picks, sub 60 completion percentage. This is a guy that was highly recruited. I think he's talented, but it's just a matter of if Michigan State can utilize him the right way and if that talent can come out. Not sure the direction of Michigan State right now. They really need to show that they're progressing forward this season, but I'm just not sure if we're going to see that. Child's kind of a boomer bust quarterback. He really needs to show that talent this year, though, for Michigan State. At number 13, Billy Edwards Jr., starting at Wisconsin this season, coming over from Maryland. He had a solid season last year. This transfer to me just doesn't really seem like that good of a match. Billy Edwards is a guy that can kind of create. In Wisconsin, when you think about Wisconsin, you think about dominant running backs and just pocket passer, game manager quarterbacks. It's really not what Billy Edwards is. So we'll have to see what kind of offensive system they roll with this year, and if it utilizes him correctly, that's just something we'll have to wait and see. At number 12, Bryce Underwood, highly recruited five-star quarterback coming into Michigan, got paid. It was like north of like $10 million or something, right? It
Something
was
ridiculous.
something crazy.
Something way too much.
So really, really high expectations for him this year. People are probably confused as to why I have him at 12, but I gotta see it first. It's gonna be really hard for me to rank somebody super high unless they're just absolutely generational and it's just so obvious. I don't think it's super obvious here. I think he could end up being a great player, but Michigan at quarterback, that's kind of a tough place to be, like super successful. I know JJ McCarthy did, but it kind of took him years to be in that system and show that. So it's kind of just difficult for me to see that happening for Bryce Underwood in year one with the expectations. I think the expectations are really unfair. So he's probably going to do less than people expect, but I still think he could be a solid quarterback. But I just have him at 12 because I got to see it first. And also, same thing here with the number 11 quarterback, Julian Sand from Ohio State. He redshirted last year. He was also a five-star. Sand got on the field a little bit last year, only threw 12 passes, but with the way that Ohio State's produced quarterbacks recently, I think he'll have success eventually, but not sure. There were some times, some other quarterbacks, they had difficult starts to the year. I remember CJ Stroud had a difficult start to the year, but ultimately ended up being great. I think Sand will be good, but without having played much yet, I can't justify putting him much higher. There's just nothing to really put behind that besides the five-star rating. And especially with Texas coming in week one, it could be tough there for him. I mean, that's probably the most difficult week one you could ask for a freshman quarterback, unless they were on the road. So maybe him being at home will help him a little bit, but I think 11's fair for a guy that hasn't played at all. Number 10, Dylan Raiola from Nebraska. Crazy high expectations last year. He was not able to live up to them. 13 touchdowns to 11 interceptions. Little turnover happy there. I think he had a fumbling issue too. Just a lot of turnovers, a lot of one possession losses for Nebraska, as has happened the last like 5 years. It seems like it feels like they're losing 4 one-score games at least every year. Same thing last year. Really talented player. We'll just have to see how Nebraska utilizes him this year. But another thing with Raiola, I mean, he was thrown into the fire last year as a true freshman, so maybe this year he can be better. I mean, it was really tough to just with all those expectations go out as a true freshman and expected to ball out. And I mean, he played like a freshman last year, and that's what you should expect from most of these guys, even if they're five stars. I mean, they're still just a freshman, and that also goes back to kind of what I was talking about with Underwood. Just the expectations he's had on him. It's kind of similar to Raiola. I would say Underwood has a little more hype just because of how much he was paid, but similar thing here with Raiola. I do think he could improve in his sophomore year, but just last year was such a struggle at times, and those super high expectations just kind of dampered my thoughts on him this year. I do think he's a guy that could rise up this list, but I think 10 is a fair spot right now. Number 9, Preston Stone transferring from SMU to Northwestern for this season. Didn't play a whole ton last year, got beat out pretty quickly there by Jennings. The SMU offense did not run well with Preston Stone in it. Jennings was a much better fit for what SMU wanted to do. But I do think Stone's a talented guy. Not a lot of talent around him though at Northwestern, so not exactly sure how that's going to end up looking for them. But with what he's shown throughout his career, combined with Northwestern's limited weapons, I do think 9 is a fair spot. Number 8, Dante Moore from Oregon. He did not get on the field very much last year, but he did play a solid amount for UCLA in 23. Did not put up good stats. 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Completion percentage of 53.5. But I do believe that was his true freshman year. So another thing, going back to Raiola and really just Raiola, thrown into the fire. Can't expect a ton from those guys. So not really going to judge Moore too much from that true freshman year at UCLA. I do think he's talented, going into a great system at Oregon, great staff. I do think he'll have success, but with how much he's played to this point, I think 8 is a fair spot. Number 7, Mark Gronowski, coming into Iowa from South Dakota State. He had a great career at South Dakota State, dual threat guy. Led them to the national championship, I believe, the year before last. He knows how to win. Iowa really need a winner at quarterback. They've struggled mightily at quarterback really every year since like Nate Stanley in like 15 or something. I mean, even he like wasn't great, but it's really just been struggle from them with quarterbacks the last decade. So they're hoping Gronowski can come in there and turn that around. Coming out of the FCS, you obviously have to judge that a little bit. So it's not for sure that he's going to come in here and be successful, but having played the highest level of FCS football, the Dakota schools are always the best. I do think his game will translate pretty good. It's just a matter of Iowa's offense, the guys around him, how it's called, how he can show his talent. That's to be seen, but as a talent, I think this is a fair spot for him. Number 6, Jaden Mayava from USC. Played a decent amount last year, but struggled with turnovers mightily. I mean, as Wilkes was saying earlier, the Notre Dame game, just absolute collapse at the end. They should have won that game. I think he threw 2 pick sixes there late. Both of them were like 90.
Terrible, man.
I think both of them were like 90 plus yards.
It was, dude, man. I cannot imagine what's going on in Lincoln Riley's head watching that all happen. I mean, they absolutely should have won that football game.
But yeah, just a tragic ending there. He did play good at times, and he did start UNLV the year before and put up some solid stats. Played well over there, but just haven't seen it all come together. I think second year at USC, he will improve, cut down on those turnovers, maybe be a little bit more accurate with the football, raise that completion percentage above 60. Last year, he was at 59.8. So I expect improvement from him and USC really as a whole. Number 5, Damon Williams from Washington. I think he got action in 3 to 4 games last year and absolutely balled out. Only threw 1 interception, 78% completion percentage. I think this is a guy that's going to come out and be a breakout player this year. I'm expecting a lot from him. Washington as a whole, I think they're going to be a lot better this season. And I think he is going to lead the way for that. But just the limited sample size, tough to rank him above any of these other guys. So I think 5 is a fair spot. Number 4, Nico Amaliava. Coming over from Tennessee. Weird year last year. I mean, you look at the stat sheet, it was solid, but it just kind of felt like Tennessee was making him play inside a box. Like, you really didn't get to see what he could do too much besides the games against, like, Kent State, and where they're just slinging it everywhere. So what I'm hoping to see from him this year is UCLA letting him do more, and I do expect that. I mean, UCLA, they don't really have nothing to lose right now. I think they'll let him sling the rock around. So I think we'll get to see the true Nico this season, whether that be good or bad. He's obviously a really special talent. He was rated 100 on recruiting scale coming out of high school. So the talent is there. It's just a matter of can UCLA tap into that. Not sure if that's going to happen or not, but with what he was able to do last year, despite being kind of bottled down by Tennessee, I think 4 is a fair spot for him. Number 3, Fernando Mendoza coming over from Cal to Indiana. Great year last year, some great moments. He was a 3,000-yard passer, efficient with the football, 68% completion percentage. I think he's going to be great for this Indiana team. I think he brings more to the table actually than Rourke did last year. He was kind of a game manager quarterback, although he was really good. I think Mendoza could be a little bit more. I think he could be a quarterback that kind of puts the team on his back if he has to. I'm excited to see what he does there. Excited to see what Indiana does this year, following up last year as well. So Mendoza, talented player. Think he'll have a good year. Number two, Luke Altmaier at Illinois. Good year last year. Illinois surprise team just like Indiana was a year ago. I think he'll improve again this year. I do want to see his passing game expand a little bit more this year. He kind of struggled with being accurate last year. His completion percentage was hovering around 61. So I would like to see him be able to be more efficient with the football, but a good talent. I just want to see if he can make those tight window throws and extend plays like some of these other quarterbacks in this list. But he did great things last year, leading that Illinois team that nobody thought was going to do anything to 10 wins. So I think two is a good spot to have him right now. And number one, Drew Aller from Penn State. It feels weird having him at number one because I watch him play against some of the better teams on their schedule, and I'm just like, this dude's not that good. But watch him play against some of the mid teams and teams that aren't good, and just see him ball out. This is just another weird situation where it just feels like a guy can perform well against the good teams. And really, Penn State as a whole, that's just been the James Franklin thing. Maybe it's just the way they call the plays in those games that makes them struggle. Maybe they're just team confidence is low in those games. I don't know. But I just want to see Aller compete better against those good teams this year. Really justify this ranking, but I mean, looking down the list, it seems like Aller is the number one right now. I mean, this could obviously change. A guy like Damon Williams, I wouldn't be surprised if he ended up being the best quarterback in the conference, or Mendoza or somebody like that. But Aller, I think having him at number one is fair. Penn State should be the best team in this conference this year. But with how they perform against Ohio State, I don't think they're going to win it. But with all the guys they return, they should be the best. Obviously, the exit of Tyler Warren could hamper this team a little bit, and they lost some of their top wide receiver targets last year. But to be honest, they didn't even barely throw to the wide receivers last year, so I'm not sure how much that's going to matter. A lot of people have been hyping up the guys they got this year, so we'll see how that turns out. It feels like they've been doing that every year, though, hyping up guys that Penn State gets, and then they end up doing almost nothing. So we'll see if he backs this up on the field this year, but I do think with how Penn State's expected to be and the hype Drew Aller gets, I feel like number one for now is a fair spot. That could change very quickly, but I'm going to have him there, and that's my Big Ten rankings for the quarterbacks.
Yeah, so I think the biggest takeaway from these lists that we've made is that there's so much to be proven by a lot of these guys. I think the guys with the highest ceilings are kind of hanging out in that like bottom of the top third, and we could see them rise up and be in the top three by the end of the season. Quarterbacks kind of battling on spots with the best teams in the Big Ten at Michigan, Ohio State. They could be low, starting off the season at low points, turnover issues, and inconsistency because they're young. We could see that pan out, and they could end up being top three quarterbacks also because of the talent around them and the coaching. So there's just a lot going on here. I don't feel like this is the deepest quarterback conference, but I feel like there's a lot of upside in it, kind of depending on what the quarterback battles shape out to be like. So I personally feel like this was one of the hardest ones we did, not because the disparity was so great or anything. I felt like it was just there was a lot of unproven guys on here, a lot of quarterback battles, teams that don't really produce high numbers offensively. So like when you're analyzing a conference like the Big Ten, like I know Landon will agree with me on this. It's hard to pick out these players based off stats. It's more of a feel thing. So like having Drew Aller and Luke Altmaier as our top quarterbacks is not because they're blowing up the stats. These guys, if you look at some of their biggest games they played in, they're not throwing for 300 yards. They're throwing for like 200 or like 170.
I mean, a lot of these teams get in their big games to try to run the football in the Big Ten, and it's just kind of the way they do it over there.
Yeah, it's a different style of football. When you get to the Big 12, you've got 5 or 6 guys that could throw for 4,000 yards this season. So it's completely different than analyzing the Big 12 or the SEC or even the ACC like we're about to do coming up is our next ranking. So I think that's what made this one probably the hardest for me. A lot to prove with some of these guys. I feel like there's a couple bottom feeders that have some talent at that position, but they're really going to struggle because of the lack of talent on those teams. So that wraps up our Big Ten quarterback rankings. We'll be back with the ACC quarterback rankings in the next episode.